Hello, hello, welcome. I am Carrie Weaver, and you are here with me for Supercharge Your Job Search. You've got me in my full energy, but I am going to go ahead and turn off my video for the time being, just so that we can start to get through the content again, which is most important. I will recommend, as I'm turning off my video, that you grab a notebook and writing instrument because, like all of my workshops, this is going to be chock full of tons of helpful information so that you can do just what this is about, supercharge your job search process. So do get a writing instrument, and we are going to go ahead and dive in. I'm actually going to start with dismal statistics. For the past 20 years, Gallup has been conducting an engagement survey with hundreds of companies and thousands of data points. And year over year, the findings seem to be getting worse and worse. But currently, 60% of the American workforce are disengaged in their jobs. And when we're disengaged, not only are we not motivated to do our best work, but it creates a problem for the company because they've got a worker basically taking a seat that someone else could ultimately have that is giving their best and engaged effort. So having a disengaged workforce is bad both for us as the human who is feeling the ick in the job, and it's actually also bad for the company. So it's kind of this lose-lose situation. And unfortunately, hopefully this image does not feel like you presently, but the bad news kind of continues because 1 in 7 workers are actively disengaged. And what actively disengaged means is they're actually making things worse at their company by staying employed. Now, we've all had that experience with working with that toxic colleague who is just really challenging to work with. And there could be very good reason for why that person is actively disengaged, something that's on kind of the company's fault. But the challenge is we never think that that's us, right? We never think that we're the bad apple that's spoiling the bunch. And the truth is, this is really painful, again, for both the company and the individual. And, waking up every day feeling this level of disengagement is, again, really painful and really hard. But a job search is really daunting. And, your interview skills are rusty at best because the last time you interviewed for a job was most likely the job that you're currently in for most people, right? There's kind of this idea of starting. The other thing that I will tell you, and I am definitely one of these, is the idea of updating a resume is just cringeworthy for me. I am a career coach, interview coach, master trainer. I've been helping people in the HR space for 2 decades, and I hate resumes. Everybody hates resumes. So the idea of how much time it'll also take not just to update your resume, but put into your job search, especially among the competition, really has you second guessing if it's going to be worth it. And then besides, even if you're lucky enough to land this unicorn kind of ideal job situation, being the new person actually kind of stinks because on day one, especially if you're a more tenured career professional, you're expected to show up and be an expert. But instead, on the inside, you feel like an imposter drinking from a fire hose. And it's just kind of all enough to make you question if your current life-sucking job isn't that bad after all. But, if you think about it deep down, you can't stay. Because if your soul continues to get crushed past the point of no return, that's just not a way to live. And I don't want that for you. So, you have to go. It's time to move on. And it's going to be better for both you and the organization. But then the question really becomes, where do you start? Where do you start this daunting process of a job search? And I think we can all agree at this point that the current job search process as it's laid out is broken. It involves, again, that dreaded task of updating your resume and then applying, what most people do, applying to a bunch of online postings and then waiting, hoping that you've, stacked your resume with enough keywords just to have some AI bot push your application into the inbox of a junior recruiter. Nothing wrong with junior recruiters. We love them, but they probably don't get you in your experience, and you're just waiting. And effectively, what you have just done is you've essentially thrown a dart towards a dartboard, being blindfolded after being spun around 3 times. Because if you get close to hitting the bullseye, or in this analogy, what I'm really saying is kind of getting the offer, your actual chance of hitting the bullseye is 0.4%. And that data comes from all of the major applicant tracking systems out there, or job boards. Career Builder is the one that actually put out the study. And we know this to be true. There's about 250 online applicants for every single posting. So one offer for every 250 applicants. That feels dismal. And I don't want this for you. So my hypothesis, as I started working with clients in the capacity of a career coach, is what if there's a better way? In fact, there has to be a better way. And I started thinking about this. What if you could shop for your job, much like you would buy a house or a car? So think about this. When you go to buy a car, wait for the 2 available cars to drive down your street, and then you pick from those 2 just because they're available. And that's kind of what applying for job postings online is doing. No, you go out and you find the car that you want. So let's think about that for a second. The factors that you consider when you're buying a car, because this analogy becomes really powerful when we're thinking about how to get our next job. Well, if you needed to buy your next car, you would think about your needs, right? How many seats does the car have to have? Does it need to have front wheel drive if you live in a place where it snows, etc.? You think about your desires. Maybe, there's a certain interior material you want, or certain, body style. And then of course you have to consider your budget. So these are all things that you would consider if you were buying your next vehicle. I believe the same can be true for a job. I believe that you should shop for your job in the same way. So imagine, you go and determine first the specifications of the company that meet your needs. You identify and talk to specific company representatives that inspire you. And this allows you to validate if the organization is going to motivate your best work and if it's the right fit. And then you decide if you want to work at the company. Now, if this sounds too good to be true, it's not. It's actually how loads of people get jobs, whether you realize you're doing it or not. And we're going to talk about this today. But first, I want to introduce myself a bit more. I know many of you. I've hand selected and hand invited many of my colleagues. And if we're new friends today, I welcome further connection on LinkedIn, and I want to get to know you better. But I go by Coach Carrie at this stage in my career. I'm Carrie Weaver. I'm a former Chief People Officer. I've been a talent assessor of many years. I'm an interview coach. I'm a master trainer. I'm an executive coach to women in leadership positions. But I have been helping people just like you find and land their ideal jobs for many years. And for the past 5 years, in fact, this was not an area of my executive coaching and leadership business that I even marketed. It's kind of on the street, like, if you want to land the offer, find Carrie Weaver. In fact, there are these groups of people. A huge shout out if anyone is here representing Park Slope parents. Somehow my name got infiltrated in that group, of which I learned there are 7,000 members in this Brooklyn neighborhood of parents. And they know if you want the job offer, you go find Carrie Weaver. So I have helped place anywhere from very senior level executives, including board members, all the way down to more junior folks at some of the biggest brands, Amazon, Nike, Capital One, you name it. If you could think of the company, I've probably helped someone get a job there. But more than my resume, what I think the most important thing that you really need to know about me is I truly believe, like genuinely, that it can be the norm rather than the exception that people love what they do. And my friends do tell me that I tend to go through life with rose-colored glasses, but I also have 20 years of working in the HR and professional coaching space to see that not only is it possible, but it happens. And I help my clients do just that. If you're here with me today, I'm guessing it's because you're part of that 60% that is not engaged in your work and you want or really need to make a change. And honestly, I say bravo to that, because as daunting as it can be to have a job search process, most people stay far too long in jobs to the point where they're so burnt out and they're actually at a breaking point. And if you're starting a job search process there, and even if that's where you're coming to the workshop today, look, it's okay. You're going to get some really good information here today. But what happen is if that's where you're entering a job search process, you can end up making a decision based on fear. And trying to move away or get out of something becomes more of a priority than where you're actually moving towards. And the real problem with that strategy is you end up picking a job that isn't aligned with your values or your interests. And it results in what I call a position mismatch. And it's kind of that proverbial, square peg in a round hole. Ultimately, what happens, and it happens all the time, and I literally just spoke to one of my coaching clients about this a few weeks ago. She left, and most people leave within the first 12 months of starting that new job because it is not the right fit. And that's not going to happen to you because you're here and you're going to get a new strategy. And I also want to invite you to stay all the way to the end of the workshop. I promise we'll be done before the close of the hour, because I want you to hear about how you can take your career matters into your own hands. So today I am going to give you the 4-step process to supercharge your job search so that you can start living a more engaged life. Because after all, we do spend the majority of our waking hours at work. And to do that at a place that doesn't light you up is not an option. It's no longer an option. That's why you're here, right? And it is possible to get to that 40% that is engaged. So let's start to get into it. These are the 4 steps. Again, grab your pen or writing instrument in your notebook. We are going to go through each of these, some in greater depth than others. But the 4-step process is to clarify, aim, polish, and execute. Let's go ahead and start with clarify. What we're doing when we're clarifying is we are selecting with purpose and intention what is that ideal job for us that would light us up and make us want to wake up every day and go to work, whether that is virtual or in person. So the first thing I want to do is actually start with an exercise. So again, grab your notebook and pen if you don't have it yet. I want to use my analogy of the career stool. So each of us has a career stool. And your career stool is the same as mine in that the 3 legs all represent the same thing. One of your career stool legs represents the organization that you work at. The second represents the people. And the third represents your position, the actual duties, what you're doing day to day. Now, if any one of those 3 legs is out of balance, your stool is going to feel tippy and uncomfortable, and it might feel like it's about to fall over. And that's that pain point where we're really moving away from something as opposed to moving towards it. So what I would like us all to do is take an objective and analytical approach to something that is actually quite emotional. So I want us to use a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is low alignment and 5 is maximum alignment. And what you were going to do first is rank your alignment with your current or most recent organization. If you're currently unemployed, I want you to think back to your most recent organization and doing this activity. And you're going to rank again 1 through 5, 1 being low alignment, 5 being maximum alignment. Rank your alignment with your organization. In doing this, I want you to think about the vision and the mission of the company, what it is they do, what do they stand for? But more important than that even, I want you to think about behaviorally, what values do they espouse? Because it's one thing in companies, and I've seen this being an HR professional, we say this is our vision, our mission, here are our values, and it's got the fancy, colorful poster on the conference room walls, but how people actually behave is not what's on that poster. So you want to think about your organization, the vision, the mission, and the values, the behavior, and give it a ranking on 1 through 5. Now, let's say you're like, well, it's a bit above average, Carrie, so I don't want to give it a 4 because that feels too generous. Here's where you can get as precise as you want. Give it a 3.5, a 3.7, and bust out your calculator because we're going to do some averaging. I love to get as quantitative and analytical as possible with this. All right. So have a number for your alignment with your organization on a 1 through 5. The next thing we're going to do is rank our alignment with the people, but we have to get a little creative in how we're going to do this because countless people come to me and say, I love my colleagues, so I don't know what to do because I can't stand my boss. My boss is a micromanager. So we're going to break down the people leg of our career stool in 2 separate rankings. I want you to give one ranking to your closest manager, the one who's really guiding and directing most of your work activities, and then just kind of lump together, your close colleagues, right? And sometimes there's, you love the manager, but you've got this really difficult colleague that you are very challenged with a communication style or whatever it may be, and it's making it really difficult for you to feel fully engaged at work. So let's say you hate your boss and you've got a micromanager, maybe rank them a 2. And if you're in a situation where you absolutely adore your colleagues, maybe give them a 4.5 or a 5, right? So then I want you to take those 2 numbers and average them together for a collective people score for that leg of your career stool. We need to talk about your alignment on the 3rd and final leg of your career stool, and that's with the position. So again, if you're currently employed, I want you to be thinking about what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. And if you're unemployed, I want you to be thinking about your most recent position. So think about what you actually do. We're going to break this down again a little bit more. So in your notebook or wherever you're taking notes, I want you to list the top 5 activities that you do most during the work week. Forget for now description says you're supposed to do, or what you think you're supposed to be doing based on your title. We have to base this on what you're actually doing, because part of the reason why you might be ready to make your next job move and you're in that 60% feeling disengaged is because the duties that you're actually doing at work are not the things that light you up. So let's talk about this. I'll use myself as an example, right? So I'm the CEO of a boutique leadership company. I have 7 contract coaches that work for and with me. But when I think about what I do on a day-to-day basis, the number one thing is business development, right? I'm really still scaling my business. This is 4.5 years in, and business development is the number one thing I do. The second thing that I do is coach and teach, right? I still am actively a master trainer. I do things like this workshop event. I do speaking engagements at companies. I do still have a few one-on-one clients, but I've got programs, right? So I'm actively doing coaching and teaching. The third thing that I do is develop content. I'm always looking at new frameworks, methodologies, tools, techniques to give to my clients and customers. So content development would be the third thing I do most of. Fourth is managing the work of my team members, right? I have to guide them and tell them what to do and give them leadership and mentoring and management. And then fifth, the fifth thing that I do most during my work week is more administrative duties, responding to emails and paying bills and things that are actually not my most favorite things to do. But being a small business owner, I still do a lot of that hands-on, right? So that's an example of the 5 things that I do most. Now, again, forget what my job description says, forget what your job description says. Come up with the 5 things that you do most during your work week. Now you are going to, surprise, surprise, or no surprise, rank each of those 5 duties on a scale of 1 to 5. So if I were to think about it again, how do I feel about business development? My number one thing, well, I actually really enjoy that. I love seeing my business grow. So I'm going to give that a 4.5, right? Sometimes it's challenging and hard. That's why it's not a 5. How do I feel about coaching and teaching? That's literally what I love to do. It's my passion. It's a 5, right? How do I feel about content development? I love it. Again, it's a 5. How do I feel about managing the work of my team members? Actually, a lot of the team members I have are marketing people and SEO and things that I'm not as familiar with. I love guiding my coaches, but I actually have to guide people who do more operation stuff and whatnot. So again, here I'm giving you an example. I have to really be honest about what am I doing and rank each of those on a 1 through 5. So that's what I want you to do. And then average that score together. So if we go back to thinking about this career stool analogy and your career stool, this exercise, as simple as it is often incredibly insightful when I ask my clients to do it, because you can ask yourself the question, and what I would ask you is like, what's up with your stool? And it dawns on people, it's like, oh my God, I love the organization, I'm super aligned, but it's the job duties day to day that I'm actually performing that is soul crushing. Or I actually like my day-to-day duties and I like the company, but if I have to wake up and look at my boss's face one more day, I'm going to stab my eyes out, right? So this is where you can really start to look at what is out of balance. Now, here's something really important. Before assuming that you have to leave your current company, I want you to ask yourself if there's a way you think you might be able to make it work where you are. Because if you ranked your career stool leg for organization and people pretty high, like above a 3.5, and it's just the job duties that are giving you heartburn, there might be a way, right? And I was actually in this position, and some of you who know me who are on know this story, but for those of you who are my new friends, I will share with you that I was a former head of HR, and that is not a job for the faint of heart. And truth be told, I was a bit disengaged, but I loved the organization and I loved my colleagues. So I got really clear about what I wanted to do, and I pitched that job to my company president and CFO to be the internal executive coach and leadership trainer instead of the head of HR. And guess what? They said yes. And I share this story as food for thought because staying is actually always an option so long as it represents the change that you need to bring your career stool back into alignment. So there are actually many more activities that I teach my clients about how to get really clear about their ideal position. We start with the career stool as a diagnosis tool and then help them get even more clear by looking at their values, their strengths. We look at past job inventories and so forth. But for the sake of time and today, we need to move on to step 2, which is aim. What I first have my clients do is an exercise that I call ideal job description. I literally have you write out your job description. And this is something that I recommend that you do as kind of a homework assignment after this workshop, maybe even this weekend, and get really descriptive. What are the duties that you would love to perform? Take a look at what we just did in the career stool and then reflect back. How often would you want to be spending time in meetings or collaborating with people or doing individual work? Do you want to be writing? Do you want to be brainstorming, etc.? Do you want to be leading or coaching the work of, more junior folks? What are the skills and strengths that you want to be doing on a day-to-day basis? And then once you've got this job description written out, take it to the internet or just ask yourself, like, does this job exist? And if you read it and you go, yeah, I think actually what I just wrote is a head of marketing job. It's more strategic and it's more about developing people, or this is a head of marketing job, but it's one around, pivoting a brand in a different way. The ideal job description is it kind of acts as a roadmap of sorts and allows you the exercise and the breathing space to say, what is it that I want to do? Here it is. And does this exist? Now, I will tell you, when I have my clients do this, a lot of them will say, Coach Carrie, I've written this job description. It doesn't exist. No company is going to want a purely strategic role where I don't do anything where I'm rolling up my sleeves, or It's in this niche that, can't possibly exist. And here's what I would say to that. Most of the jobs we think of as novel do exist. They're out there. If you can dream it up, someone probably already also dreamt it up and it's there. And so knowing the position that you're after is really the first step in finding it. So that's why this exercise is in the AIM module. But then what you're going to do is you're going to investigate and curate a list of 10 companies that you would be delighted to work at that fit with your values and interests. I call this the 10 company list. What do you think about what you're really aligned and excited about? I have 2 dogs. These are not my dogs. I live in the Bay Area and it doesn't rain but for 2 months. And those 2 months, it doesn't stop raining. So I would be the type of person that would be delighted to work at a doggy raincoat company. Does this sound like your cup of tea? If not, what does? I recommend that you research a list of companies that you have no idea even exist yet. That ultimately, when you create this list of 10 companies, you will have a list of 10 companies that you would be delighted to work at. And you're saying, okay, great. Well, where do I even start with this process? The first thing that you want to do is you want to determine the company size and then the industry. So let's talk about company size first. You like small, medium, or large? It's kind of like Goldilocks, right? What is your perfect fit here? Small, medium, or large? The size of the organization ultimately gives you a sense for how much personal impact you'll be able to feel. Smaller companies, you tend to be able to feel the impact of your work more. Larger, huge global conglomerates that have 100,000 employees in 50 different countries, you feel your work less, but often being that cog in a huge wheel can also feel incredibly rewarding. So that's where the size often correlates to the level of personal impact that you feel. Now, the industry is really interesting because that matters more for your alignment, going back to the career stool. Think about the organization, the vision, the mission, the values. Maybe working at a doggy raincoat company is not your cup of tea because you're not a dog person, but you would be delighted to work at a kitty raincoat company, right? So you have to think about what is the industry that you would be delighted to work at, and literally go to Google search bar and type in medium-sized animal apparel companies, and you will find a company that you had no idea even existed. I promise you, my clients are so surprised and delighted when they do this activity. Once you have your list of 10 companies, then you want to head over to LinkedIn and determine who you know that works at each of these companies. And you want to start building a connection strategy. You want to start with a company where you have the most obvious connection. So let's say my number 1 company that I wanted to work at was Doggy Raincoats, but I don't actually know anyone there. But my second top choice for the company that I'm interested in exploring, I do know someone that works there. You want to start with the most obvious connection. What you're going to do is you're going to reach out and potentially even make new connections with people that are in the field of interest. So if you're a finance or accounting professional, you're going to find someone in an organization that's in your same subject matter expert. If you're in operations, HR, marketing, tech, whatever your industry is, you're going to find someone who is a decision maker, and you're going to build a connection strategy. But before we go too far down this path, we actually need to take a moment of pause, and we'll come back to this because we need to get to step 3, which is all about polish. We're going to do this together today, but before you reach out to anyone at your, ideal company list, of which you'll have 10, you need to be prepared to present your best self. You can't just go in and say, I'm looking for a new job, but I'm not really clear on what that is, and I just want to hear what opportunities you have. No. You've just wasted a valuable first impression. So we need to build a value proposition statement. And again, we're at least going to start that together today, and you're going to finish this up as homework. So a value proposition is the essence of what you do uniquely well that also benefits your employer. I want you to think about this as the real reason you've been promoted in the past and why your employers love you. Let's talk about that a little bit more. Your brain is always doing two things. The first thing your brain is doing is it's processing information. I call this like behind the curtain. It's the stuff that no one can see. But when I say the wheels are turning, I can see the wheels turning. Your brain is processing information in a unique and special way. And the other thing you are always doing, whether you realize it or not, is you are relaying what is in your brain to other people. It's how what is being processed actively comes out. These two things are your mental and interpersonal skills. And what I think is really exciting about this, and maybe this is why I'm a coach, I don't know, but because I really genuinely get excited about learning what people's mental and interpersonal skills are, because the way your brain does these things and the way my brain does these things are totally different. The other like inside secret that I'll tell you as a former, HR professional and now executive coach and interview coach is your unique combination of mental and interpersonal skills is the real reason your future employer is hiring you. They're not actually hiring you for your experience. I'm going to repeat that. Your future employer is not actually hiring you for your experience. They're hiring you for your unique combination of mental and interpersonal skills. Your experience is proof that you have that unique combination of mental and interpersonal skills. So when you have succeeded in your role and you've delivered XYZ amazing project assignment, that experience is proof that you have this unique combination of mental and interpersonal skills. And I think that is incredibly exciting. Here's mine. I teach winning interview techniques to stressed out job seekers who struggle to convey their true value to a future employer. By synthesizing the best tools and relaying them into actionable strategies, 4 out of 5 of my interview coaching clients land job offers from their very next interview engagement. I'm going to teach you how I built this. And the one things I want to point out are the emotional words. We know what it feels like to be a stressed out job seeker, that phrase. The word struggle to convey. We've all struggled in communication before in the past. I'm really making the problem statement here emotionally visceral for people. And then I'm telling them what my unique superpowers are and how I help solve that problem for people. Here is the formula. Now, this is going to look a little random at first, but stick with me and we'll work through it together. So you're going to start with I, because this is, is about you, right? You're going to name a skill followed by some kind of descriptor phrase connected to the who or the what is the biggest and most emotional problem that you're trying to solve. Then you're going to state the problem and then say by using a few skills how you ultimately resolve that problem or what result you come to. So let's look at mine again with the formula built in. So teach is a skill. It's one of the things that I do best. What do I teach? Winning interview strategies. That's the descriptor. We've got a connected word. Who do I teach? That's the stressed out job seeker. What is the problem? It's that they struggle to convey their true value to a future employer. And this, y'all, don't feel bad if this is you. This is like every single talented person that comes to me for interview coaching support or job clarity coaching support. We all have this challenge, because how could you possibly on one sheet of paper that's your resume truly convey all of your brilliance and what you're capable of doing, and sitting across from someone in this awkward interview conversation for 30 minutes based on the questions that they're answering also really convey this? So it is a problem that a lot of people have. But where I come in, skill number 1 and skill number 2, how my brain really works best is taking all of these amazing tools and strategies and techniques, synthesizing it and distilling it down to what's best, and then teaching it back to you in very simple, bite-sized, actionable tools. And then the result that I've gotten is extraordinary. This is my superpower, and you are going to start to build yours in a very similar way. And we're going to start by looking at a brief list of mental skills. You want to make sure that you really take pause here, and you're going to pick the 4 mental skills out of this list of 15. This isn't an exhaustive list, but it captures most of the things that our brain does. I will say that you do all of these things, but not with equal comfort, ease, or joy. That last word I said is really important because you can do things and you can do them well, but if you don't love doing them, do not pick that skill. Number 4, computing and working with code or numbers is absolutely my kryptonite. I do not do that well. I don't pretend to do it well. It is just not how my brain works. I am not a linear sequential thinker. I'm much more number 3, imagining and creating. I'm much more about synthesizing, number 9. And you saw that in my value proposition, right? You want to pick the things not only that you're good at, but that you love doing. Just like the mental skills, we have our interpersonal skills. Are you an awesome communicator? Do you thrive on mediating conflict? Are you one of those people who is incredibly good at getting people to, win-win outcomes through negotiations? Again, whatever your strengths, ensure that you're great at doing them and you love doing them. So again, with these interpersonal skills, you're going to look at this list of 15. You're going to pause the recording and you're going to pick the 4 that really feel like you. And after you read the list of both mental and interpersonal skills, if you read them, you should have that feeling of, wow, if I was doing these day in and day out in my next job, I would be highly engaged. If you read your list back and you don't get that warm glow, go back to the list and make sure that you pick a set of skills that would really evoke that emotion for you. So what you're going to do again is you're going to start with 4 mental skills, 4 interpersonal skills, so a total of 8. And then I'm going to ask you to reduce them down to 2. You want to pick the 2 that you really feel like encapture the essence of your true gifts and talents. Now, I want to share how you're going to build using the formula. Ultimately, you're going to combine 1 to 2 mental and interpersonal skills to use your statement. And you can modify any of the words in the formula, again, to get to that deeper meaning that really resonates with your true talents and gifts. And I want to show you an example of another statement that I helped a client build that I just think this one was so effective when we finally landed on this. So it says, I design systems for scaling businesses who lack in-house operation support. And right there, we can understand, we get what a scaling business is doing. And of course, they might not have a full suite of operations support if they're a startup. This person's superpowers are listening to client needs at a really deep level. Think about lots of people are not good listeners. They really listen deeply to clients' needs and they optimize and customize solutions to ensure that companies have the right data to become profitable earlier in their journey. I love this one because it is simple, it's clear, nothing about it feels forced. This is what you're going for. Crystal clear and concise when you're building your value proposition. Now, I want to go back to the formula for a second because see at the end, in the very last sentence, the phrase, so that, and then there's, then you say whatever your result is. That's my recommendation for how to use the formula. But if we look at the one again that I created with my client, if you look back up to kind of that 3rd or 4th line from the bottom, it actually says, I ensure companies have the right data to become profitable earlier in their journey instead of so that. This is where you have total artistic license to stray from the formula and say something that is most impactful to you so that the listener will really hear it. So again, my recommendation would be start with the formula and then massage any words or phrases that don't feel like they quite fit. Your goal is to be able to have the statement memorized to the point where when you deliver it to any future employer in a discussion, you feel really comfortable and confident saying it and it just flows. The next step is execute. And I know I went through the value proposition statement creation quickly, but you could go back and do this for homework. But we need to talk about execution because this is the part of the strategy that is actually going to get you job offers, not by applying online, as we well know. And how you do this, simple, but you are going to request and hold informational interviews with subject matter experts in your field at your company of interest. It is that simple. Here is why. This is real data. 1 in 12 informational interviews results in a job offer. These aren't interview conversations. These are just conversations. And if you're wondering, like every single client I've ever had says, well, what if that company isn't hiring for my role? I will tell you a secret. It doesn't matter. I have lived experience, and truthfully, actually, so do you. A couple of things. A, companies are always hiring. Even in the pandemic, where there were hiring freezes and layoffs, companies still hired. The truth is, top talent is always in demand, no matter what the economic condition. And I know that you're top talent. You want to know why? I know that because you're here. And crappy employees don't come to workshops to learn about how to get an awesome new job. So you are already well positioned to do this strategy just because you're here learning this information. The other thing that I know is, having been an HR professional for over 15 years, by the time you see an online job posting, it's too late. Now, what do I mean by that? A company has to pull together resources, gotten budget, gotten headcount approved, written out a job description, and so forth. And what that means is no one internally, at the point where it was like a whole other headcount, raised their hand and said, I'm seeing this problem. I'm seeing this lack of strategy, or no one's doing this, or whatever the situation is. I'm raising my hand, boss. It's basically like saying, put me in, coach. I would like to navigate this problem. Here's the skills that I have to do that. And can I do that? And the leader invariably goes, holy crap, yes, thank you. I didn't even realize the extent that that was an issue. And that is what you're effectively doing in an informational interview. You're raising your hand and you're saying to an industry subject matter expert, and you're also one, here's a problem I'm seeing in the field, and here's how I solve it. Then they go home and they think on it, and they find a way to hire you. It might not be tomorrow, it might not be in a week, but my experience has been that hiring managers oftentimes don't even know that they need the talents of the person sitting in front of them until the person was sitting in front of them. And then they find a way to make it happen. And the data says that 1 in 12 informational interviews results in an offer. And I think this is incredibly exciting. How do you do that? is the $64,000 question. You have to develop an outreach and communication strategy. Prior to requesting any informational interviews, you have to go to LinkedIn, you have to connect with people, and you have to network in through people that already know those people, right, at these organizations in order to land the conversations with decision makers. And sometimes this is easier said than done. And this is actually why there's so much value in my new program that I'm about to tell you about, because I literally wrote the communication templates that you will use to get in front of these people, the outreach communications and the communication strategy. And this is also where a little bit of coaching support comes in really handy, because sometimes we have to get creative and brainstorm on how are we going to get you in front of the right person. Sometimes we think we know who the right person is, but we have to get a little more creative in who is that right person and kind of network in and build a communication strategy. After you do a few of these informational interviews, eventually what you'll do is you'll be talking about your delightful self through the lens of your value proposition, always about how you're the solution to their problem. You're going to listen to them. You're going to ask engaging, thoughtful questions, and people love to talk about themselves. People are often quite flattered to receive a request for an informational interview. Hey, Carrie, tell me about running a coaching business. What's that like? I take those calls all the time. And I can't tell you how many people at the end say, hey, if you ever have any openings, please consider me. And then guess what I do? I consider them. Because here's the other thing. People don't do this strategy. They really don't. They apply online and they walk away and go, oh, okay, I didn't get the job. That sucks. So just by virtue of doing this, you're setting yourself apart, and you're basically cutting the line. When you do an informational interview strategy, it's before there's even a job posted that exists. So you're not one of 250 applicants anymore. You're one of 2, 3, 4, 5 people who have even reached out to this subject matter expert and talked about their career and your career and the problems in the industry and how you're awesome at solving them and your value proposition. You've just come across as wonderful and talented and smart, and you're top of mind when that job becomes available, and then they hire you. Here's what I'll also tell you. Here's some incredible statistics. Nearly half of the employees that come through recommendations stay for over 3 years, while only 14% that are hired through job boards stay for the same amount of time. And referrals are hired 55% faster than those on a career site. So it's in a company's best interest to use employee referrals, and it's in your best interest by way of informational interviews. This is the strategy that gets you jobs. Now, I will tell you, this is not a sprint. It is a marathon, but it is one that can be fun and exciting because you're taking your career search into your own hands by deciding exactly what job you want to do and at what company you want to do it at. And so ultimately what you'll do is you'll continue this process. You'll work your way through the 10 company list. You'll add new companies if you need every month or so, and on you go. So I have told you what to do. It's the 4-step process. I've told you why to do it. Job shopping, really it's informational interviews, is the way to get a job. But the how, I gave you really high level stuff today. So I want you to stick through and listen to this last little bit for the next 10 minutes on career CAPE. And if you haven't figured out right now, CAPE is the acronym for clarify, aim, polish, and execute. What is career CAPE? It is a virtual self-paced course that contains 16 easily digestible video modules of your delightful Coach Carrie, excited, engaged, teaching you the step-by-step process to clarify, aim, polish, and execute. But you don't just get the class alone. You also get 4 months of live weekly office hours support with me should you need that more personalized feedback approach. And if Zoom meetings aren't your thing, because we're all kind of over that, I hear you. There's also a Slack community that you can ask all of your career and interview questions and receive that expert guidance. But this program is the result of 15 years of award winning, I'll have you know, as well as the thousands of interviews that I've conducted and the 5 years of interview coaching that I've been doing. But you're probably wondering, well, tell me more about the class. What's actually part of the curriculum? So module 1 of the course is Clarify. And again, you got to experience the career stool activity today. And there are also a number of lessons that you would go through to really getting clear about what is that right next job for you. And if you're still not feeling clear after you watch the course, that's why you come to office hours and I coach you through getting clear. After Clarify is AIM. Now, I actually think the AIM module is probably the most important if you're in the job search process, because one of the best things the class offers really is the step-by-step process with templates, how to find your ideal job, how to do outreach to the companies, how to have an effective informational interview, how to do your value proposition statement, etc. And it's really the networking strategy that actually gets you the job. Then there's this whole section around polish. Now, polish is really about leveraging the power of LinkedIn, because gone are the days where a great resume was helpful. In fact, they don't really even get read in the application phase anymore. They only get read if your interviewer has read it 5 minutes before they're about to interview you. So what you really need is a kick-butt LinkedIn profile that will passively get you found by recruiters and set you up for executing the job shopping strategy. And I have got some bad news and worse news. Not only are your LinkedIn profiles bad, they're working against you. And what most people don't realize is the seemingly innocuous skills and endorsements section of your LinkedIn profile, of which you can quote unquote pin 3 skills, LinkedIn has an algorithm that they prioritize profiles in search results based on the skills and endorsements. And if you don't have your skills endorsed, you've got profile trouble. The endorsed skills LinkedIn uses as social proof that you're a good accountant, chief of staff, real estate professional, fill in the blank, whatever it is. So your skills and endorsement section on your LinkedIn profile, I need you to start thinking about that as a 3-word resume. Even if you do nothing else learn from today's session, go over there and pin the 3 skills that are most emblematic of your superpowers. Here's what I'll tell you. LinkedIn is an incredibly powerful platform, and you're most likely using it wrong. So Career Cape as a course will teach you how to master LinkedIn, not just for your job search, but also in branding yourself as an expert in your industry and field. And then last but not least, execute is all about interview mastery. Now, these are the skills. Problem solution, in fact, is probably why 4 out of 5 of my individual interview coaching clients got the offer from their very next interview engagement. I actually think this is worth the cost of the program alone because it teaches you how to think and communicate differently. I give you actionable strategies on how to show up as a solutions-oriented career professional, not just in an interview conversation, but in any conversation. Again, I think that's worth its weight in gold. Speaking of gold, how much does it cost? Career Cape, the program, the 4 months of coaching, I'm selling for $24.97, so just under $2,500. It's the course and the 4 months. I am super, super excited about this new program, Career Cape. It was something that I had never intended to create. And then every time someone would come to me for career guidance and interview training, I was like, gosh, I just don't know if I want to do this. But every time I would do it, I would get so jazzed because the truth is, I freaking love getting people jobs. Because here's what I'll tell you. When you find the company that motivates your best performance and you meet those people who delight you on a daily basis, everything changes. It's no longer a job. It's no longer a grind. The grass really is greener on the other side. And I would be so honored to be the coach who helps make that a reality for you. So I want to thank you for your time. I do not take it for granted that you came today. I'm humbled and grateful anytime anyone wants to listen to me talk for an hour. I truly mean that. And until we meet again, I wish you the very, very best in your career endeavors. Thank you so much. And I look forward to working with many of you in the future.